Hello, everybody. Welcome to Brain Club. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the executive director of All Brains Belong. I'm really glad you're here tonight for our conversation about transformation. Share screen, get us oriented. So all month long. So if you're new to Brain Club, every month we have a new theme. So it's the new month, we have a new theme. And in November, our theme is transformation. So, when we talk about change, it's not like change for the sake of change. We think about like deep fundamental shifts in how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, how what we can demand and expect from the rest of our lives. And so we're going to start this conversation tonight with a conversation around self-narrative, the way that we see ourselves and how we make sense of our needs and how we move through the world, what we believe is possible from our lives. That doesn't happen in a vacuum. And as we'll hear from our panelists tonight, self-narrative is shaped by all kinds of messages that we've absorbed from school, from work, from the people around us. So we move forward. Before we get going, closed captioning is enabled. You just have to toggle it on at your end if you'd like to use it. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the live transcript closed captioning icon. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles, or you can choose hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. If you're new to Brain Club or new to All Brains Belong, we're a nonprofit supporting the health and belonging of people with all types of brains. And we do that through medical care, through social connection, employment support, and community education like this. And so you are invited to be part of the ABB community, and we're really glad you're here. Brain Club is our weekly education program for purposes of demonstrating ABB's approach to neuro-inclusive culture, for purposes of shifting broader community awareness of the issues of importance and concern to neurodivergent people, so as to promote new ways of thinking and being in the world. And then the idea is that you go forth into the rest of your life and carry what you learn here forward, and that's how systems change happens. Everyone is welcome at Brain Club. Neurodivergent people, people supporting neurodivergent people, people who are exploring their neuroidentity, and anyone with all types of brains who wants to learn more about neuro-inclusive culture. What we do here at Brain Club is we provide education and information about neurodiversity and neuro-inclusive culture, and we try to model aspects of neuro-inclusive culture through community panels like tonight, guest speakers, and book chats. To provide a better way of understanding neurodivergent experiences through our presenter stories. And for many people, this is a way to feel less alone. It's also a place throughout this, you will often hear us criticizing systems and aspects of systems that make it difficult for people to get their needs met, and we bright spot alternatives. What we don't do at Brain Club, we don't give medical advice or provide therapy or a place to process individual experiences or provide individual emotional support. We also don't criticize individuals or groups of individuals. This is like about systems. There are multiple right ways to participate here. You can have your video on or off. Even if it's on, we don't expect anything of you. Feel free to walk or move or fidget or stim or anything else that needs doing. Sorry, I got distracted by sound. Yes, in addition to affirming all aspects of identity, it's a program where we really think about the collective community, and we protect the space for people with all types of brains. So we invite you to listen, to learn, to observe what a neuro-inclusive space looks like. And maybe you might pick up new words or concepts, and Lizzie's going to link in the chat to our Brain Club digital resource library if you want to look around. Some of the entries have glossaries, but you're also welcome if you hear something you haven't heard before and you want more information about it, feel free to ask in the chat. And we'll see with what you hear today, how that connects to the rest of your life. Speaking of the chat, you are welcome to use it during tonight's panel. We just ask that if you're going to use the chat, we ask that you type in the big box only and avoid using the reply threads. Because what happens is, because we all have different brains that have different amounts of processing time, a lot of times people are responding to multiple threads and then the chat is bouncing up and down, and then none of our staff can keep up with it and we can't respond to anything. So just ask if you're going to use the chat, please use the big box. All right. If you're new to Brain Club, keep coming back. It might take a couple times to see how we do things here. So welcome. All right, so tonight's Brain Club is sponsored by North Country Federal Credit Union, and we are grateful for North Country's support for several of our programs, and some of which you'll hear more about later in this month. We're also grateful to all of you who support Brain Club and make it possible for our community panelists to be compensated for sharing their lived expertise with us so that we can learn. What tonight will look like. I'm going to go through some short slides to introduce some concepts, and then we're going to watch a pre-recorded panel about internalized ableism and self-narrative, and that will run 45 minutes, and you're welcome to use the chat as we go. So as I said, this is our topic for the month, and we're going to build, these are going to build on each other. We'll look at, identity and self-narrative, workplaces, communities, and systems. So we'll begin with our conversation on self-narrative. So there's a lot of challenges to self-narrative for neurodivergent people, especially those who are neurodivergent and marginalized for multiple aspects of identity. There's a lot of messages that come from all kinds of places, and neurodivergent people are often taught to mask, to push through, to work harder. We're told we're too much or not enough, and often are told that our needs are inconvenient, and worse. So over time, many people start to believe that, and that's the process of internalizing ableism, and that can erode the most basic things that we need for health: self-trust, autonomy, sense of belonging. But here's the truth. I'm going to quote the wise Sarah Knudsen. You are not the problem. We have a world that needs changing, and that's really an important take-home point of tonight. So with that, I'm going to switch over to our pre-recorded panel. Actually, first I'm going to introduce our panelists. Thank you to our panelists, Britt Brassard, Simone Arnold, Aspen Kupper, Steve Owens, and Summer Stelter. Now I'll start the panel, and again, you're welcome to use the chat while we watch. Here we go. That's gonna probably need to be good enough. Hopefully this is big enough. Well, maybe this is my... Yes. All right, great. Founded All Brains Belong 3 years ago. It was really with the idea that I was seeing my child, who then was 4 years old, I was seeing them already be thwarted by a world that was not designed for their needs. I went to pick them up at preschool one day, and I literally saw them on the margins of the chain link fence, like preschool play yard. Like I could just see, I could just see it. And it was heartbreaking as a parent. It was just heartbreaking. And then, of course, professionally, all of my patients who also were on the outside of their lives being, passively or actively harmed by all of the broken systems: healthcare, school, workplace culture. And then, of course, my own experience as a late identified neurodivergent person. I think that when I guess what I was expecting 3 years ago, I was expecting and demanding of myself to create a world for my child to grow up in that didn't suck. Like that's really what this was about. But really what this has been about over the past 3 years is it's been a community of people of all ages, kids, adults, families, everyone coming together to say, like, we're not doing this status quo
nonsense anymore. We demand and expect better. And along that journey of reimagining something better, we've been forced to reckon with ableism. Ableism is just like all of the other isms. It's the belief that there's a group of people who is superior to another group of people. We know, of course, that's bad, right? It's bad, all the other isms. This one's bad too. So the belief that it is superior to be able to do something, anything, that is embedded in so many of our systems, in healthcare, in school, in workplace culture, in everyday life, right? And so it can be intentional or unintentional. And I think that when we think about how all of the isms, racism, all the discrimination against, gender, sexuality, age, like all of the isms, right? They're all connected. And so when we think about building a world that works for everyone, and the intersectional aspects of people's identities as they move through a world and are marginalized because of all of the aspects of their identities or some of the aspects of identities, sometimes this one gets missed from these conversations. So what internalized ableism is, it's a person internalizing societal messages. I'm not good enough. I'm broken. I need to be fixed. I'm too much. I'm not enough, right? It's and what we've seen over the past 3 years as people have come together to reimagine what's possible. So often this is about these hard-rooted beliefs. They come up like all the time. They come up like when you're least expecting it. And so when someone has their whole life received messages that lead to their internalized thoughts of this stuff, the only way to start to unlearn this stuff is through finding each other.
It looks like the me of a year ago muted myself. That's hilarious.
Have I been talking for like this whole time while muted? Has that really been what's happening?
No, just right now.
Oh, thank God. Thank you so much. Okay, great. I don't know what happened with that, but that's great. Ooh. Anyway, I also am realizing that I can't see the chat if anybody was trying to get my attention. Okay. Ooh, thank you. So anyway, all right, I'm dysregulated. I'm gonna try to return. So as I was saying, it's the idea that when you find a community, you realize you're not the only one on this journey. That's what allows you to start to begin to unpack this stuff and start to begin to take a look at, the narratives, the self narratives, the way you think about yourself, the way you talk about yourself. That starts to shift through connection with other people. And that's what we are hoping that you will find here at Brain Club and in all of our programs. And it's a process. It's not like, oh, I come to Brain Club once and now I don't have internalized ableism. I experience internalized ableism every day of my life. But it's a journey and it's a process. And it is my hope that over time, you will catch these little moments. But first, we have to better understand what those little moments look like. So from one of our asynchronous panelists, Megan Thomas from our Community Advisory Board, what Megan describes is that internalized ableism is a breeding ground for a mess of negative emotions, including shame and judgment. It can become very easy to gaslight yourself into a spiral, shutdown, or meltdown. She continues with, I become frustrated with myself for just not being able to do the thing, not admitting to myself or others that I have needs and may require accommodation. So we are going to watch a video panel of several members of our community reflecting on this topic and what this has meant for them over time. So thank you to Britt, Simone, Aspen, Steve, Summer, and Megan. Let's listen to your panel. One day I will learn a more efficient motor plan than the one I have right now. Okay, here we go. And again, we'll leave the chat box going on the side if anybody wants it while we listen. So we're doing this panel to talk about how internalized ableism affects people throughout their lives. What do you think about that?
A lot of thoughts as someone who's autistic and also a therapist. But the big part is I find it to be like very important for folks to know that they're autistic, neurodivergent, or whatever, language they want to use for it, because it is such a big part of shame reduction. And that is so true across like any identity, that when we are not able to embrace and acknowledge like all parts of our identity, it creates so much shame and guilt and inaccessibility to things. And it's just exhausting. And it's already exhausting enough to be autistic, ADHD in this world, that adding the exhaustion of shame is unnecessary. And
Like, in the social world, I'm just always astonished. There are people that move so easily in the social world, and they don't have to do the math. They are, they just they move intuitively, and I've got to figure everything out. And it's the same exact thing. Yes, can I do it? Yes. Have I been able to organize a professional life and do it? But it comes at a cost of exhaustion that sometimes leads me to just not try to do things. And I would say it's the same thing in my analogy. It's invisible. You can't see the extra effort, or the fact that, my professional life could incite such overwhelming anxiety. I couldn't sleep and so forth. I'd get up, I would go back at it, but at a certain point, the sheer exhaustion in navigating some aspects of the world is such that it might lead me to decide not to do things.
A lot of people have told me I can't do a lot of things. So I've always thought that I couldn't. And so I wouldn't even if I wanted to, I wouldn't try.
I think that internalized ableism has been, for me, what I named it was self-negative talk. And so I have been working really hard to change those words, but now understanding that it's actually, it's the same thing, but it's directed in a different direction, I think.
I think it's interesting because negative self-talk is such it's like this, it creeps up on you. It's like something happens and your automatic response connects to these core beliefs.
When I was looking at the prompts, especially the one about stepping into learning and unlearning internalized ableism, my biggest thing is you have to unlearn the other stuff too. You have to look at the other stuff too, because it is all connected. And honestly, I think ableism, what I've noticed watching other people and in my own journey of unlearning different things, is that the two things that tend to come last are ableism and fat phobia.
It has always seemed to me that those isms, there are a lot of people who don't know that they are isms.
Yeah.
Well, of course I would not want to be disabled. Did you just say that out loud?
Right, yeah.
You said that out loud. It's not even you thought it and didn't say it. You said it out loud because you don't think there's anything wrong with what just came out of your mouth.
I grew up in a time where it was really common for people to very openly mock disabled folk. It was very common for people to say that person, rides the short bus, or make fun of so-and-so, or use the R word and stuff like that. And it was really common. And as someone who was relentlessly bullied for so many other things that I would later realize were just autistic traits, just no one knew that they were, I didn't need the label of being autistic, ADHD, or anything. I was already getting enough flack in all quarters without that label. It also led to a lot of coldness because I was struggling so much in so many ways. My only way to deal with that was to just become harder as a person and colder and to like pull away, which led to me not having a lot of compassion for other folks, especially as like a teenager, because like if I'm working so hard to do this thing, why can't you work as just as hard as me? I found that like as I started to embrace my own needs as an autistic person, that being compassionate towards other people didn't feel like a demand. It felt like something I could like genuinely be. Because up until that point, my compassion felt like a thing that was performed out of the sake of making other people comfortable, because it was really hard to understand other people's struggle because I was putting myself in so much pain and discomfort regularly. And so it created just a lot of resentment towards other people.
In high school, something just changed in me where when a school board attendant, a superintendent told my IEP meeting that I was to the R word to graduate, and that I should just quit school because he doesn't see me going anywhere in life. And I was just like, I heard that and I was just like, I said some explicit and I flipped my chair and I left the room.
When you are putting 10 times as much energy into doing things that will otherwise appear to be simple navigations of the social world, it has an effect on you. And that's an effect that is independent of any a question of internalized ableism. Now, you know, the internalized ableism that arises is that, you know, when you have difficulty in social situations and the person who you're talking with begins to look over your shoulder subtly and wonder whether there's somebody else that would be a little easier to talk with or a little to communicate with, probably, you know, they don't intend to be hurtful, but the accumulation in the individual autistic person's experience of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these types of things does lead you in some subtle, almost unconscious way to begin to believe that you're broken.
I always felt broken and misunderstood in many aspects of my life. Normally trying to describe to people how I felt turned into me pointing a finger and being too sensitive. I didn't have the correct language. I had to teach myself comprehension in high school and later on in life, up to today, to understand others and to try to fit in and blend in. I'd go from one relationship to another, romantic or platonic, throughout my life.
Much of what you just said resonates with me deeply. So you've been in like arriving at this understanding of how this has played out. Like I imagine you didn't just be like, do, now I understand it, right? So like can you share about what that's been like the process of unpacking that?
Yeah, it was the first part of like kind of getting through the initial kind of like shame response of being like, I might be autistic. I remember watching like a bunch of videos on TikTok and like they like really resonated super deeply with things that I just didn't talk to people about, that I was just like, this, everyone will struggle in this way, so like, but no one talks about it. And I was like, oh, everyone doesn't struggle with this? I was like,
The differences in the way that your brain processes experiences and does things, it exists independent of that, but it also contributes to that. So I think that there's a distinction to be made between those two things, that it would probably be in a ideal world, it'd probably be possible to experience those differences without them morphing into something that's self-destructive.
As I started grad school in 2021. So the pandemic was raging. I mean, it still is, but people acknowledged that it was raging then. The pandemic was raging. I was newly diagnosed with ADHD, and I was also newly diagnosed with EDS. Or actually, at this point, I hadn't even been diagnosed with EDS. I just had a lot of pain, and no one knew what it was. So I learned really quickly that I had to advocate for myself, and I had to stand up for myself because no one else would. And watching, I feel like that's when I really started to get cued in to all of the ableism, especially in academia. Like, it's horrible, but even just the everyday ableism of when UVM lowered their mask mandate, and we had, like, I guess it's great that in each class the professors are like, let's have a conversation and decide this together. Like, in some ways, great. In other ways, as this would be expected to go, I, the disabled person, had to speak up and identify myself as disabled and immunocompromised to get my classmates to care.
I look back at it now and I realize that actually maybe I've been doing it pretty much all my life, showing that people I can do it. Because, like, if I look at it, like, I wasn't supposed to live when I was born, and I'm 37. I wasn't supposed to walk. I walk my dog every day. I wasn't supposed to talk, and now you really can't shut me up. You know, like, I wasn't supposed to graduate high school. I got 2 associates, and in December I'll be graduating with my bachelor's degree. So, like, the internalized ableism is really just me being scared to do it. Like, scared of when somebody's like, I don't think that you can do this. And being like, oh, what if I can't? What if I fail? Like, that's like the very, like, the scariest part for me is like failing. Like, even in school, when I'm doing in school, if I get anything below a 95, I feel like I'm failing.
Perfectionistic drive to, like, do the thing and show the people and prove, like, that is, I think you're so insightful in saying that that's how you are still manifesting internalized ableism, because the perfectionism will allow you to let go of that, whereas lack of perfection will not allow you to let go of that story. That's not true. Yes.
And that is an internalized ableism thing that has stayed with me and is still kind of with me. That, like, I want to be good at my job. I want to do everything my job says I am supposed to do, and I want to do it efficiently and quickly, and I want to fulfill every part of it. And my supervisor is actually the one who was like, Aspen, slow down. You are putting too much pressure on yourself. And I think that's where things can get tricky for me, is like, it's not even the system putting undue pressure on me. It's me putting undue pressure on me. Because I think this is probably like an autism, like, trauma thing. Not like an innate autism thing, as much of a, like, we have to prove that we're good. And this drive and need to, like, meet all the criteria and meet all the goals so that we prove that we are worth having around. And so I, like, want to be the good worker, and I want to get the stuff done, and I'm also just like, these are the rules and you need to follow the rules. And other people are like, these rules are ridiculous and they're not achievable. Don't kill yourself trying to achieve them.
Because all the isms are connected, like the perfectionism that is also part of white supremacy. Like, it's internalized ableism is such that you were told you had to participate in that. You had to. Otherwise you have no value.
Yep. And I think the individualism too of, like, being disabled so strongly connects me to the need for other people. But I feel like I have to recognize that other people are not connected to that need. And still feel like I have to choose carefully who, when, and how I ask for help. and be like, well, I just asked them for help, and so I can't ask them again.
It's like some things are internalized ableism, some things are just like hard, some things are just hard.
Exactly, and that's that hard piece that I thought would be worthwhile talking about, or and I was thinking about, I looked at that email I sent you, and I was thinking about an analogy, and so I thought about, let's say I drove into the parking lot at a mall or a store or what have you, and I had a handicap tag, that on my car. And I pulled up and parked in a parking place that was close to the building. And I got out of the car, and I looked healthy. And then, that might, invite curiosity. It might invite judgment. But I walk in, do my thing. But you're a doctor. You might be able to tell me any number of conditions that would result in this. Whether it be COPD or chronic fatigue or who knows what. But that would create this sort of a situation. And if I was compelled to park at some distance from the building, the fact that it takes me 10 times as much effort to cover that ground, well, I might be able to do it, just as I might be able to climb a flight of stairs. But maybe the enormous effort involved in doing so would lead me to isolate, to not do it. And that's what I'm talking about with respect to the added effort that nobody can see to do certain things.
So if we could separate this, because I'm interested in your journey of arriving at what you just said, where you have amassed this collection of experiences where you are, quote, able to do the thing, but at great cost. And because it's an invisible disability, no one sees, and they expect things, and they don't see what goes on behind the scenes to make that so, whether that be socially or executive function or whatever. When you recognize that, how does that recognition change your experience, if at all?
Well, sometimes you're caught in a conundrum because, if you take actions to, for want of a better word, protect yourself from that, then you can deny yourself human experiences which have value, and so it's a conundrum, so you can respond to that and remove yourself from the situation or do other things to ameliorate it, or talk to people and say, this is what I'm experiencing. That all those things bear some cost. Or on the other hand, you can ignore it and just power through. I'm really good at powering through, but that's what I've come to realize recently is that the way that I've powered through in my life is through dissociation.
Yeah, same.
Learning developing a really robust capacity to tune out my own body and to tune out my own reactions. And those reactions don't go away, they get subsumed, but they just emerge. That's where you begin to feel crazed, you begin to feel dysphoric, you begin to feel broken, because yes, you can power through, but powering through comes at some really, really, really significant costs.
You talk
Yeah.
about this with your child?
I do.
What do you
Yeah,
say?
I let him know about my youth and a lot of unintentional, people say things, and it's a lot of unlearning that you have been trying to really put awareness, for everybody out there. But, a lot of people don't realize they're doing this. The awareness is the biggest part.
Right. Awareness of like the ways in which your culture is impacting the things that bear out in communication. When my 7-year-old makes a comment like, "Oh, well, that's easy," I'm very intentional about, oh, it's easy for you.
Right.
Right, because I try to be because we certainly want to be aware of strengths and plan a life based on those strengths, but I don't want anybody thinking that
Right.
their brain is the default brain. I experience disability or I am disabled by my environment.
Yes.
I have, but I don't think I even entertained that word at all as being relevant for me. Probably not till like maybe a year ago, and it was like my physical health conditions where like that because it goes back to kindergarten being introduced to the word disabled.
Then I spent a lot of time going like, okay, so this is also happening when I'm having a lot of health stuff and like the connection to the health things. And I started doing research. I was like, so let's look into like the history of disability in the United States, because like that's the kind of person I am. So like I listened to the audiobook of like a history of like the disabled history of the United States to get kind of like this foundational knowledge. And I was like, okay, that is really helpful context for understanding it. Then I started reading books like by like different disabled activists and stuff. I started following people like Crutches and Spice on TikTok and like listening to these like different things and being like, okay, all right, so like this is how ableism is showing up in my life, and reading the works of Casey Davis and like How to Keep House While Drowning, and realizing like all of these different things are just showing up in my life, and how do I work on this, and building neurodivergent disabled community where it became really normalized, like this idea like you're allowed to rest, and like people just really normalizing the idea of rest, really normalizing the idea of accommodating and not shaming when someone's like, I just can't do this thing right now.
Realize that it's okay to stick up for myself in ways that like I would be like to, because I used to be ashamed and like just really quiet, and I still, if I'm having a hard time with something and I go to a doctor and I'm like, I feel like this is what I need, and they're like, no, that's not what you need. That's not it. And like I say it again, like I say it a second time, and they still like push me aside. I stop and I'm like, okay, like surrender. And I think I do that just because of I don't like confrontation at all. And I think that, but with this case manager that I had, she wouldn't give up. She was like, no. Listen to what she's saying. Like,
That's amazing, right? So you got this model of like, this you don't it doesn't need to be a confrontation, it can be assertive, and so you got to see that. But the thing is about backing off when you say something twice, and then it's also like triaging your energy, right? Because if this is clearly someone who like doesn't get it, doesn't get you, is not open, and I could see where you might say, well, I'm going to save my spoons.
yeah.
So as people are on this journey of self-discovery, and like so like first up they learn that internalized ableism is a thing, right? So and then you can match that pattern, one of our many strengths is pattern matching, right? So you can match the pattern of there I go again, but that doesn't make it go away necessarily. Do you have any advice for someone who like knows that internalized ableism is playing a role in their life, but they can't seem to get it out of their way?
Well, the fact that they're noticing it is actually a huge first step, because you can't change something until you've noticed the thing, and you may spend a long time in that noticing, and that's okay. You also probably, before you can start implementing it, you're going to want to spend time building compassion for yourself. When we talk about like trauma work, we talk about this idea of like we're trying to build someone up to be able to be their own compassionate witness. And so if all you can do is at this point is notice and build compassion for yourself as a human, it's going to make it that much easier to implement the action eventually. And the other part is like surrounding yourself by other people who can model that for you, so that when you're like, I'm struggling with this thing and I'm not feeling good, having people literally kind of like lovingly go like, then take the day off.
So number one, which is like the most important to me, but I see you, I hear you, I notice you when I go to the store. One of my clients, a child, an adult, you're not alone. This sounds somewhat corny, but I mean it. Sometimes I'll say hi to you. Other times I may have a full conversation and make you laugh and show you kindness. Totally not something natural for me, something I learned that helps not only me, but other people who may need some kindness. And it can go both ways. Number two, patience, self-forgiveness, and forgiveness to others from their unintentional acts or lack of empathy.
You know, because people don't talk about this, right? So before a couple of years ago, I never met anyone who talked about any of this. And when something happens that doesn't go well, whether that be socially or, you know, cognitively, or, you know, I mean, everything's cognitive, like, you know, something doesn't go well that relates to something that is hard for me. I previously, like, you know, it's that narrative of like, what the hell's wrong with me? Why can't I just do the thing? Everybody else is doing the thing, right? So there's a part of that that includes the belief that it would be better to be able to do the thing. And for me, that part of internalized ableism is still there, and it creeps up all the time. I like to think it's not there, but it is there. There are things that I wish I were able to do easily because it would be easier for me, right? And so that's the part.
Who would guess? Who would guess what you just said? You know, I mean, me, I've had a very distinguished career as an educator. Who would guess? You know, that's that.
Which is part of the problem, where like I remember the first time that I think it was the day I got my autism diagnosis, I then like went to work. Like I told a physician at the hospital who I was pretty close with, and the response was what you just said. It was, "Oh wow, I never could have told." And
Yeah.
I was just so deeply offended by that. And then, like, I mean, I've had a million of those since then, right? So it's based on the belief that, quote, you'd be able to tell, and that being able to tell would reflect that there was something like not good about that.
Yeah. Yeah, well, the problem is that when it can't be seen, it can result in behavioral things which can be highly problematic. You know, when I became so dysphoric that I wrecked a truck, you know, it's like then these things come out of nowhere.
Right. Yeah. Whereas like nothing really comes out of nowhere. It's like what you said earlier about, you know, you get to a place where the things in the world are impacting everything.
Well, in the education field, you know, we talk about students, and the analogy that we use is a shaken soda can.
Yes.
Okay, and so the student comes into your class, sits down quietly. I mean, I've had this happen to me. And then suddenly there's a world-class meltdown where you're evacuating the other students from the classroom while this kid destroys everything. I mean, I've had this experience. Shaken soda can. You said and it was completely innocent. Would say something like, you know, no, you had your turn doing that in the last class. And all of a sudden, what breaks loose.
Yep.
That's the shaken soda can. The soda can is sitting there. You can't tell that it's been shaken, but when you pop the top off, there's soda all over the place.
You know, I think just making people aware that, like, if you call me sensitive, yeah, I'm sensitive, and it's not negative. Like, it's okay that I'm sensitive, and I can cry if I need to let everything go. But calling me sensitive in the way that you're saying it is a negative. Like, you're shaming me, and I don't need to be shamed for feeling this way. Instead, why don't you comfort me and give me empathy? You know, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to fix it, but maybe try to understand the situation. So I'm really trying, like with my employees and every single person I meet. I mean, I tell people my access needs. I tell people I'm autistic and have ADHD right away. And then I tell them this is how I work. And, you know, it really helps people work with me.
Is the issue of hugging. Now, we're Americans and like everybody hugs each other. I think Europeans think it's really weird. But, you know, I've gotten to the point where, you know, I'm just not comfortable, you know, I'm just kind of sick of the discomfort. And now I'm sort of stuck in this place of like, if I don't hug people, I'm going to look cold and unfriendly. But if I do, it comes at personal cost because I've got all this stuff going on in my brain about what, you know, should I hug this person? Should I not? Is this appropriate? Is this not? I'm doing all this math. I'm doing all this math. A friend of mine came to our house, came to a gathering at the end. She said to me, may I hug you? Would you like a hug? And of course, if somebody says that to me, I'll most often say yes, because I like affection as much as anybody else. But the wonderful thing about that accommodation, if you will, is it completely relieved me of the need to do the math, you know, and so all of these things that go on in my brain didn't have to go on for the simple courtesy that this person extended to me.
So it's the idea of like, especially for people who are expected to always be caretaking, always be doing things, always succeeding, which so often, and I think for the core of her audience and her approach is like Black femmes or femmes of color, but it is also so applicable to disabled people of all genders, expressions, races, everything like that, because it's the idea that just allowing ourselves to rest and not force ourselves to be productive and like subscribe to this capitalist mindset of productivity is a form of resistance. And yeah, I think that like blew my mind for me to just like, it helped me alleviate so much of my guilt about not doing all the things all the time, especially as an activist, and as someone who wants to feel involved in the community. Like, rest is an act of resistance. Not pushing yourself to burnout is an act of resistance.
I mean, it's interesting. We shared in the chat during Brain Club the 2021 article about the characteristics of white supremacy culture. And I remember the first time I read that a few years ago, and I was like, oh. And like once you learn it, you can't unlearn it. And so when you recognize that like pressure to not rest is in fact you're a pawn of the system, and like you are perpetuating white supremacy culture by like allowing yourself to be caught up in it, like damn straight I'm gonna resist that.
Yep. Yeah. It was this article that absolutely blew my mind that was all about every other, maybe not every other, but most other like ism in the world is rooted in and perpetuated with ableism. So
Send me that.
yeah, it's amazing. And so kind of the examples it gave are like the idea that like women and people of color didn't deserve rights because they weren't as smart as white men. They were less evolved than white men. Like all of that is ableism. And so ableism was used to perpetuate other types of oppression.
Educating myself on the history of the struggle, educating myself on other people's lived experiences, and then also just like being in community.
Helping connect others to a community that I have found myself embracing is life-changing and helping to spread awareness.
Some advice that I have for someone that's struggling with internalizing ableism is believe in yourself and try to like do I like to do SMART goals.
And then number 4 is really important. Collaborating with many other minds to bring awareness to schools, employers, healthcare, mental health entities, and policy holders of the whole body aspect of living and having a fulfilling life.
I do think maybe the most useful thing is if we could educate ourselves about that some of these behaviors don't mean that the person doesn't like it, but that they're just having they have some struggles with it, and to just kind of let that go. To the extent it would take a long time. I mean, I think people to overcome the 1,000 times when somebody's looked past you to find somebody a little easier to talk with, it's gonna take when that's become your normal and that's become the thing that you've expected, it's gonna take quite a few experiences to begin to counteract that. I don't even know if that's a practical thing. I really don't, but being conscious and being aware maybe can start to chip away at that.
It's I think when folks are so dysregulated and so traumatized and so like I don't know, there's just so many people who have not had the experience of feeling safe showing up authentically in community. So like they don't even like just the idea that like you'd come and have a community and learn about this stuff or unlearn about this stuff together, and like why would I want to do that? Why would I want to do that? Like other people, they suck. What do you say to someone who that's been their lived experience?
I get it. I would say like one of the things that I kind of like asked myself was like, it's do people suck or does society suck? And those are two very separate things. And more often than not, what people hate is like society and culture and how it interacts with us and the demands it places upon us. Because most people will say, well, I like this person or I like that person. And what they don't like is just like everything else that's on top of it. And so stop viewing community as society.
Okay, you just exploded my brain. I don't even know what to do. I think that's about the most profound thing that I have heard in, weeks, if not months. Like, holy crap. That needs to be on a t-shirt or something. That's amazing.
That it's one of those things where it's like most people don't hate people. Most people want to be near people. Even like clients that I work with who have experienced the most intense trauma at the hands of other people desperately want community. And they want connection and they want to feel seen. What they don't want is to feel shame and judgment. And that's a universal human experience. No one wants to feel shame and judgment. And so like if you have people coming together with that understanding that we're not there to perpetuate the demands of society, that we're here to build something where we just get to be us, then you're not engaging with society. You're engaging with your community. And those are two very different things.
With respect to, the all brains belong community, the internalized ableism for me takes the form of like, okay, when is the other shoe going to drop? You understand what I mean?
So like in that, like, yeah, someone's gonna like tell you don't belong. Is that like that?
Or
that kind of thing?
yeah, like when is it going to be? When is the thing that I've always experienced going to happen? And so I keep coming back and I keep coming back and, and having this sort of experience of sort of radical acceptance, I think has the potential to slowly untangle that thing, but it's slow and it's not very easy,
Thank you for sharing that. And you're not the only one who has shared that by any means.
Yeah.
And I think almost for many people, I don't know if this is how it is for you, like the idea of like this is what socializing would like look like what community connection would look like, and like I don't know how to do that thing, and this doesn't literally even sure it feels like that thing that I thought that I was working towards. So this thing I'm like working my way towards something, but like this is the thing you show up and people are excited to see you and we say thank you so much for coming. Well, like how can we make this experience better for you? And like if every single time is that, I don't know, isn't that community connection?
I think one, be patient with yourself and kind to yourself. And I think this kind of ties into that, which is like, don't use unlearning internalized ableism as another reason to be ableist toward yourself. Don't beat yourself up for like not immediately unlearning all the ableism and not immediately being like whatever your version of liberated from ableism is. When you have an ableist thought, it's not helpful to beat yourself up about it. It's helpful to notice it and keep going. And I think it's so easy to just get caught in this cycle of like, I'm going to unlearn these things, whether it's ableism or anything else, and then beat ourselves up for not immediately being the perfect person, having unlearned all of it and having none of it come out in our words or actions ever.
Like having people who are willing to entertain the idea of a kinder world is also a really big thing. The other thing that I think is really important is internalized ableism. All the isms are just at the end of the day related to white supremacy culture and our capitalistic culture. And if you want to dismantle that, you're dismantling all of them. You can't just dismantle one. And so your commitment to dismantling your internalized ableism means like you really ought to be open to dismantling all of those other things, because otherwise they're going to sneak in there in really sneaky ways and like fuel that internalized ableism. Because if you're still buying into the idea that you're like capitalism is the way to be and like you have to put out and be productive, no amount of self-love and compassion is going to work to like overcome that. In the same way that like if you hold any belief that some people are better than or more worthy than, even on like a subconscious level, it's going to make it really hard for you to extend that kindness to yourself and to like deconstruct that shame. And so doing this work is really deep work and very healing on a lot of different levels. You can't just do one of them. You kind of got to do all of them. That doesn't mean you have to start with all of them. It's just like recognizing like you're going to be questioning a lot of things. And that's what makes identity formation like so hard, is you're going to find yourself deconstructing so many things. So it's not a race. This is a marathon. This is something you're going to do over time. I have been deeply entrenched in like deconstructing my own connection to white supremacy work since I was like in high school. Like I've been doing that since then, and every day there's still more that I find out, and I'm like, geez, okay. And so being kind to yourself around that, because you're gonna be like, I got this ableism thing on lock, and you'll find something. It's okay. We all do. It's like a fish being like, how do you know you're in water kind of situation. So you're gonna find it constantly. So just being kind about that process.
Oh, such wisdom, like so much wisdom that you have just imparted to us. Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Anything else you want to add before I shut off the recording?
The thing that I like to remind folks is taking care of yourself and meeting your needs is a radical act. Like that is, in a world that tells you to not do that, to suffer, to like put yourself in painful situations, and that's somehow virtuous. When that is a morally neutral act, just like taking care of yourself is a morally neutral act. Choosing to fight against that system is a radical act, and is sometimes the most radical thing we can do, even more radical than showing up to a protest, calling your senators and writing in, because you are actively fighting against a culture that glorifies that harm being caused. So know that when you're doing that, you are fighting against systems of oppression. You are fighting to make the world a better and kinder place when you prioritize your care.
Holy cow. Yes, amen to all of that.
Wow. That was all the mics, yes. Well, thank you so much again to our panelists, Steve and Summer and Britt, and Megan, and I'm so deeply grateful for and Aspirin, for so deeply grateful to all of you for making yourselves vulnerable and sharing those experiences with us, because I think, what we saw in the chat as we watched is that just really everything that everyone said, there was someone else saying me too. And I think that's what we do here together at Brain Club. And I think that scrolling up to, I'm gonna wrap us up with a quote from Sarah in the chat. Sarah saying that I should have looked before I had this idea. Sarah saying that this is the point of Brain Club, that it's the idea that in community that we learn from one another, and that here we go, I found it. Many of us are collectively rewriting our own narratives together in community. That's what we're here for. So thank you all so much for being part of tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next week as we continue our conversation on transformation. We'll be talking about transforming workplaces, and we're going to be joined by a panel of organizational leaders who have been through neurodiversity training and talking about how their lives are different and how they're approaching workplaces different, since bringing this lens of understanding. So we look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everybody. Have a good week. Bye.